Charles Soludo, CFR, Governor, Anambra State.
Your Excellency, the former governor of Rivers State, and now, say, is the Minister of Nigeria or the Governor General. Because the Minister of FCT is also the de facto governor of the FCT, isn't it? So, Your Excellency, it's really a great pleasure. You are our landlord of all of us. It's really a great pleasure to be here. And then the Managing Director of the Abuja Investment Company Limited, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I'm really quite honored to, address all of you on this particular auspicious occasion. I only have a slight apology to make. If I appear incoherent, forgive me. I came in last night and up to 2 a.m. I was trying to scribble. What am I even supposed to say? I spoke with her about 8, 9 in the night and asking, so what are you expecting me to say? Tell me what I will say and I will just say that. But I've scribbled a few things. Let me really respectfully rest on all the already established protocol so that we can get down to business. This particular business summit is a very novel one. And I must commend both the minister, the investment company limited, for this particular unique initiative. As has been said, this is the first time it's happening. Quite auspicious. In Abuja, that is known as home to politicians, it's a capital, it's a political city as it were. All of a sudden, you are now trying for it to transit into a business and investment summit. Congratulations. Congratulations. It says quite a whole lot about the pathway to the future for Nigeria. I walked around, I came in 6 minutes to 10, and I took pains to walk around the kiosks outside, where you have various demonstration centers, businesses, advertising, and so on. It's beginning to send a message that this isn't going to be just another talk shop. I am hopeful that this will be, a summit where deals will be closed. And thanks for the initial, that presentation, that was quite no, please, don't distract them by putting that, because we are not shooting any. It just shows that, I was going to make the point that you've done investment summits happen everywhere. People are getting tired, quite frankly. And I must say that as a person, even when I was chief economic advisor to the president, 2003, I used to tell him I'm not a fan of investment promotion activities. We'll go to London, go to here, call investors, and you finish spending humongous amounts of money. But if we did the calculations of the return in terms of how many investments actually came in, little or nothing. Because the investors are not just interested in what you say, they are interested more in what you do. They are more interested in what you do. The ease of doing business. Sometimes the investors have more information about the place than even what you are providing them. And they often think about what we say to them at the fancy places in London and so on as nothing but propaganda. But here, I want to believe, and from what I have seen so far, that the Abuja Investment Summit will be pioneering a new approach to it, where you bring in the investors and the businesses. And these things that you showed us here on the screen, that we will be having the maybe the pre-feasibility studies on some of them on display, so that actual investors will interrogate them and then be able to say, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, and so on. And perhaps the next year's own, to which I'm inviting myself to come and sit at the back here, would like to say that the goodwill messages will be delivered not by politicians, but by actual investors who have closed deal this year. That will be the way to demonstrate that this year own has produced any report, any result. I've been asked to speak on a subject which you call fostering economic prosperity at the subnational level through investments. Subnational level. Well, the 36 states of Nigeria are as different as they are similar. Nigeria is made up of, Nigerian economy is 36 states plus FCT, isn't it? So, if you talk about what happens on the subnationals, you are talking about what happens in Nigeria. And here we are in Abuja. We must be focusing on Nigeria. So what I will be focusing on is to give, just randomly speak about a few points on this investment process, where we are and what we should be doing, where the world is going, and how we leverage and key into those, or how we even do things differently here. So I slightly modified the title to say Nigeria, securing the future through sustainable investments. And I will highlight quite a few nuggets of the difference. Sustainable investments that we must have to mainstream in this country if we are going to claim the 21st century. To put a context to this conversation, and I'm sure I see many panels of discussions, we need to have a sense of the meta-level architecture. Where is the world and where is Nigeria? Because you don't invest in a vacuum. Investments don't happen in a vacuum. They happen within a context. And what's the global, what are the mega trends in the world today and Nigeria that will drive investment decisions and direction of investments? For example, in terms of mega trends, global mega trends, we know several of them. The demographic shifts and urbanization going on globally. The shifts such as aging populations, particularly in Europe and North America. And this also offers some opportunity, because as I will talk about much later, the aging Europe and North America offers Africa, and particularly Nigeria, the largest of them all, with the most youthful population, if we can get our acts together to be able to supply them with the labor force and population of the future. Yeah, seeing some of my European friends there, but they are closing the borders, but we are coming, so on and so forth. Urbanization is also a global phenomenon. So over the next 30 years, there will be significant changes going on in the world in terms of demographics, where the population will be, the shifts. Asia is becoming the home to the world in terms of shifting demographics, where the people are, and increasingly also going to be the center of the world in terms of economy, so to speak. The digital transformation is ongoing. We all know all of this. The environmental concerns, climate change, and low carbon economy, driving sustainability and impact, and also driving investment strategies globally. The trade dynamics and regulatory changes are also shifting. The nature of the global markets, dynamics also evolving. The demographic shift I've mentioned about how it is going to be influencing healthcare investments, seniors living facilities, and urban infrastructure development. And no, I don't want you to be shooting this. Can you stop? So we don't, I want you to listen to what I'm saying rather than there. Investing in technological related areas, artificial intelligence, automation, renewable energy, and digital infrastructure will be driving investment towards sustainable green initiatives, impacting flows into renewable energy, clean technology, and eco-friendly practices. Will be influencing investment flows by affecting trade relationships. That's the geopolitical development, the climate change, and so on. The whole point, dear friends, is that there are dynamics globally that are affecting and will continue to affect in years to come how global investment flows will go. We know stuff about the FX in terms of the fund flow, how the interest rate, foreign exchange, and inflation rates are among the factors also driving even portfolio flows and long-term capital across the world and into Nigeria. Coincidentally, we had a table here, showing the charts as to where Nigeria is relative to the rest of the world in terms of inflation and interest rate regimes, so to speak. Many places you have real returns to capital, okay? But we still have negative returns right here. It's affecting the flow of funds to our economy, so to speak, where the rest of the world is. Because when you are asking FDI, foreigners, to come and invest, you've got also to understand the dynamics of what drives this. We're asking people to come and invest in this, the skyscrapers they have to go and borrow the money. And the money they have to borrow will be at some cost. If somebody is going to borrow at 30%, what is that investment that is going to invest? And what will be the rate of return? So before you're asking somebody, you have also yourself done the math yourself. If you were in the person's position, would you do so? These are, what I call the context of realism. The flows of foreign direct investments across the world, mostly towards Asia, and Africa received, for example, barely 3-4% of it last year. And Nigeria, in terms of the flows of both portfolio and foreign direct investment, Nigeria is grossly punching below its weight. Whether relative to our population or relative to the size of our economy in Africa and globally, we are punching way, way below our weight. And we need to understand what is going on, so to speak. They show lower investment in infrastructure and digital economy, but strong growth in manufacturing and critical minerals across the world, and so on. Now we provide, the dynamics and so on as to where these things are going. I just wanted to give this context, and I go to what I consider to be the main key points I want to leave you with. Nigeria has continued to struggle to attract foreign direct investment. Like I said, we are punching way below our weight, as it were. But that is the point I want you to note. Globally, dear friends, we are moving the world. There is a shifting global economic power. Economic power is shifting from the G7 to the new E7, the emerging market economies. Economic power is shifting. I remember in the early 91, 92, I was at the Brookings Institution and working on the global model that's used by the IMF to do their forecasting multimode. I transcribed it to work on PCs. And the only 7 economies that their national economies happen to be in that global model. The others were put in the rest of Asia, rest of this put together. The only 7 economies there were the G7, the US, Japan, Germany, UK, France, Canada, Italy, in that order, then. They were the 7 largest industrial economies in the world. Today, the economic power is shifting very rapidly. Now you have E7, the emerging market economies 7, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, Turkey, South Korea. Depending on which order you might think of with the last 2 in terms of the order. Economic power is shifting and is creating tensions around the world. In fact, about 2017 or thereabout, Goldman Sachs also had some predictions about how the economies will shape up by 2050. I think several things have changed in between then. That even some people project that the top 5 economies by 2050 will be number 1, China, number 2, US, number 3, India, Indonesia, Germany. You can look out various projections as to where the economic power will, how the world will shape by then. These things, as we watch the trends and how the shifting economic power, Nigeria must also understand where things are going to opportunistically position itself, to know who these are strategic partners will have to become of the future, both in terms of investment flows, capital flows, and strategic bilateral and other arrangements. I think the old man in one village in Anambra was asked about the way things were going, the way he could describe what was going on around him was, he said, my children, things have, he said, instead of saying change, he says chunge, that everything has changed. So the world is changing in a very dramatic way, creating quite a lot of tensions, and you'll see how different countries are responding to this, including the big US. When you hear the MAGA movement, America, make America great again. Now, there is some tension. We're going to curtail China. Why are you stopping them? I thought we said it's a world of competition. And they are outcompeting everybody and taking over everything. But we now deliberately want to slow them. So there is quite some shifting with all the tensions in the world. And I am coming to that in a second, and how Nigeria must also see the threats that are emerging globally and also opportunistically position ourselves to take care. In Nigeria, there are some mega trends as well, which are both threats and opportunity. Our population growth, as one talked about, projected to be over 400 million by 2050. This is a very largely youthful population. In fact, it's projected by the turn of this century, Nigeria will be the 3rd largest country in the world by population, after India number 1, China number 2, Nigeria number 3. All these people will need housing, they will need sewage, they will need food, they will need to be moved around, and so on. And that's why the Honorable Minister, the transformation of Abuja in the area, especially in this area of infrastructure, is key. Without it, it's like American Express. You don't leave home without it. Because people must be able to move from one place to the other. So, it's our own mega trend. Massive interregional migration, urbanization. Several few places are getting more number. There is a surge to Abuja. There's a surge to Lagos. There's a surge to my state as well. We have massive, influx of people. For every 10 criminals we catch, more than 8, 9 of them are not from Anambra. There is a surge as well. And you have several other such. There is challenges of criminality as a new economy. Kidnapping and banditry. They're no longer seen as criminal, and we better recognize what is going on. It's evolving to become the new economy. Somebody says it's even better than oil in terms of return on investment to that. I don't know which oil company that you grab somebody and in a few days you get the amount of money that people are getting. It's turning out to become a huge industry. How we'll deal with that, I think, is a subject for another day. There's huge infrastructure deficit and dearth of skilled labor force for the 21st century. I've seen many estimates. Nigeria will need $3 trillion of investment in infrastructure over the next 30 years, and all those, of course, it all depends on the efficiency of that investment, but it's just good for us to think about some number. There's the challenge of structural change, what we might call the hysteresis of the past. We're still struggling, managing the exit, for example, from costly and destructive subsidies of the past. This is part of the trends that we must have to grapple with. Managing our way to exit from this is, I think bold steps have begun, but we must model it through to a sustainable end. GDP, I've had mentions here with the largest economy. Yes, by population now. In terms of GDP, if you put it in dollar terms, maybe we have slipped from being the largest now in Africa, but it all depends on the exchange rate. In terms of, because exchange rate depreciation, that's what I call the GDP compression in dollar terms, to now almost 300 billion, compared to over 500 some years ago. But this is because of the exchange rate variation. If tomorrow exchange rate appreciates 50%, boom, your GDP in dollar terms will also can also be heading towards $1 trillion. So it's variations in exchange rate. The environment and climate change, desertification, deforestation, flooding, and erosion that are upon us. These are some of the mega trends that we have to grapple with, which also affect investment in Nigeria. If you live in my state, and 8 local governments in 2022 were completely flooded. You'll see 2-story building, and you will only be seeing the roof on top of the, the water, so to speak, destroying hundreds of billions of naira worth of assets and goods and even lives. You can't be going through this every 2 years, and you hope to. So you invest 2 years later, they're all wiped off. You invest again. These are things that are affecting that. Macro imbalances and volatility. We have low savings and investment nexus. Here, having is a capital scarce country, unfortunately also experiencing bits of capital flight. So it's a double whammy that we are having. Poverty and inequality escalating. These people, it's a big topic in itself, the poverty and the inequality, and the link, the nexus to criminality, and how we break the vicious cycle. Increasing diversification of the economy. The economic structure is increasingly being diversified. Oil doesn't have the same dominance as it had in terms of output, but now has dominance in terms of forex. Continues that and, lowering contribution to government revenue. But in terms of forex, foreign exchange earnings, is still, and trade is still very dominant. There is increasing technological penetration, and of course the new economic vectors, tech, ICT, the fashion, music. I've heard about our Nollywood teams. They're quite growing. But let's get down to programming this investment thing and the decisions, especially at the public sector level and the private sector level. I'm glad when the Honorable Minister made some remarks, his initial remarks, it came down to a point I will come down to in a second. Because first, which investments, where and by who? Of course, by sector, we know transportation infrastructure, very critical. Power, as electricity, especially renewable energy, areas of investment. ICT and technology, water, housing, manufacturing, finance and insurance. They all rank very high, as the case may be. FCT here, the issue of housing estates is a big industry. And then, but I can say you are going into ICT, technology village, and so on. Very, very important. But very issues of manufacturing also very, very key. We want to think that if you consider the nature of agglomeration that is going on in the country, the patterns of movement and where the populations are concentrating, you will see that there is a high stuff to Lagos. I think second should be Abuja. Then you begin to have other places. I've talked about Anambra, Rivers, Kano, and several other places. As a country, we must have some very strategic interventions in job-creating opportunities in these centers. They require more than normal investments in order to de-risk investments in these particular locations. And I will say a word or two about that again. I've talked about the size of investments that will come depending on how we de-risk the investment and the efficiency of investments that we'll need. Who are we targeting? Who are you targeting in this investment summit to invest in Abuja? I will say I'm battling with where do I put the emphasis between the domestic investors versus the foreign investors. But I would dare to say that foreign investors will not come rushing if the domestic investors are scared to go in. Foreign investment follows a lead by the domestic investors. Everywhere. They follow the lead. They will get information from the local. They won't just fly in from somewhere and then with a briefcase. No, they will need locals to tell them where the dead bodies are buried, as it were. But all of them are threatened by the same stuff, which is the macroeconomic environment and that they need to deal with, and the regulatory framework. Now, if we have to accelerate investment, there are few key drivers. So far, and thankfully, the macroeconomic framework is gradually falling into place. I think the central bank, in terms of stemming, we've now moved from massive currency substitution. That was a few months ago, what we call currency substitution, where most Nigerians, even civil servants, they get their naira, they want to go and buy dollar as a way to hedge, to preserve value. And so people lost confidence, bit of confidence in the local currency, and that was driving rapid depreciation of the naira. Now that has stemmed to a significant. I've been watching the NAFEX and NAFEM rates as they go, moderating, stabilizing to some extent. So currency volatility and substitution and volatility of FX is abating significantly. Inflation rate seems to be moderating as well. Hopefully, both forex and price level will stabilize, and the interest rate and monetary policy will loosen, so that interest rate can then, when it loosens, makes it better and cheaper. So all this investment thing we're talking about, somebody can go and borrow at a rate that you can finance and have real return on investment. Now, the lower interest rate will also show up the domestic investment and even foreign investment. In the short to medium term, dear friends, oil and gas will remain, in the short to medium term, that oil and gas sector will remain the game changer for Nigeria. It's still going to be very, very critical. And we're hopeful that with the duty regulation going on there, that it will attract some investment in the downstream. But very importantly, the upstream, we need to unlock the opportunities inherent there. If Nigeria produces 3 million barrels tomorrow and sells, that's forex. It helps to stabilize your foreign exchange rates even probably appreciating to some level. It provides the revenue for the kind of investment in infrastructure and the other things that will require. That's what will unlock a whole lot of opportunities. So in the short to medium term, before the investors and everybody comes, the public capital must significantly lead the way, and oil and gas will help to unlock that opportunity in terms of the macro environment. Multilateral and bilateral finance and development finance with long-term concessionary finance will bridge a lot of gap in the interim, while the others are hedging about the macroeconomic volatility. Addressing security and ease of doing business. The Honorable Minister spoke about the security thing. And then we fast track the reforms that the federal government has embarked upon with regards to our tax regime, the national tax regime, synchronizing that. But let me make a point that I want to leave you with, building on part of what the Honorable Minister had mentioned. Dear friends, there's what we call the new mercantilism and pseudo-nationalism. It's both a threat and that's an opportunity. Today's world, many countries, new nationalism is back. Economic nationalism is back. New mercantilism is back. People are trying to say America first. And I want to say that we must, first point I make here, is that we must intentionally, the whole agenda of also Nigeria first philosophy, as a philosophy, is something that we must mainstream. This will require us to intentionally nurture national champions for sustainability. If you see the companies that have pulled out of Nigeria, how many of them happen to be national companies? None. With the first company, the day they have itchy feet. The day it jumps to the next one, and so on. They're very opportunistic, extremely opportunistic, so to speak. There's no emotion to it, you know. So for long-term sustainability, we must intentionally nurture the domestic capital and build them. It's a very big topic. For latecomer industrializers, governments must help to de-risk certain strategic investments for the private sector. So, for example, the illustration of the estates where government goes in to build infrastructure to attract investment. You are de-risking that particular investment by that particular investment in infrastructure. You are lowering the risk that a potential investor will have to bear. But then you need now to have thorough kind of engagement in terms of structuring that partnership in a win-win situation. So we must nurture our national champions through aggressive backward integration schemes, from importation to industrialization. That's a scheme we are pushing up in Anambra, to turn some of our importers to now come with their partners, domesticate those and start producing them here at home, with the goal in the long term for them to start exporting those things that they used to import. It requires hand in glove between the state, the government, and the private sector. We must deliberately promote the African capital and trade. Nationals have higher risk appetite to invest in Nigeria. Nationals have higher risk appetite. I will share with you, and I will tie this up with a point I make about ethnicity of capital. There is ethnicity of capital. Capital is not just blind, it's not colorblind. It knows where it wants to go. It goes where it will call home. Sitting as the governor of Central Bank, I saw quite a bit. And I can, in my memoir, I think I have one full chapter on a whole lot of this. And part of the motivation why I set out to establish the Africa Finance Corporation. Because I knew we could be preaching about foreign investment to come and finance African investment in infrastructure from now till thy kingdom come. It won't come. And it never did until we set up the Africa Finance Corporation. We mobilized $1 billion plus to set it up today. There are probably close to 15 billion invested all around Africa, largely on big ticket infrastructure going on around Africa. It couldn't, go and plead with the World Bank to even develop regional framework for funding intra-African infrastructure development. They don't have such a framework. And still they don't. So you can wait till thy kingdom come. We must build the African capital as a frontier capital that will lead even the other foreigners to come in. Today, the AFC can now catalyze other capital to come hand in hand with them, but they lead the way. We must have these focused industrial parks and so on. In Anambra, we're developing what we call the Anambra Mixed Industrial City. As a focused area, I understand that that's part of what you are also developing here in Abuja in terms of focused locations, as the case may be. But let me say this, dear friends, still within this concept of economic and, nurturing national champions and getting them to invest, I want to share a simple point with you, that the biggest way to promote massive investments in all sectors in Nigeria is to buy, eat, drive, drink, made in Nigeria. Yes, I drove to this conference with my innocent vehicle, made in Anambra State. See, I'm wearing Akwete, made by women of Akwete in Abia. And my shoe, probably there. If you come, I'll show you around Obunike and all of that. And you see, I'm wearing my own nationalism on my head. That's a green eagle out there. I am Nigerian, and God didn't make a mistake to make me Nigerian. If he wanted me to be any other, he would have created me to come from there. And since he made me Nigerian, there must be a reason. The reason is that we must make it work here. Everybody else fights for their own country. Everybody else wants to, because no matter how you think about globalization and all of that, populations are still confined within the nation states, and the governments must provide jobs for those people. And so you see where the tension comes in terms of the competitive thing. I remember, and we must mainstream African Continental Free Trade Agreement and keeping an eye on the global merger. But talking about this ethnicity of capital, I remember, I just tell you one story that happened when I was governor. And after we had implemented the consolidation of the banks, and several of our banks now started emerging as regional and even global champions. You go to Heathrow and you see some of them advertising on the place, and all of a sudden, those rickety banks now are taking over the rest of Africa. I remember someday, Barclays Bank, their, I think, Middle East and Africa team came to see me. Before then, it was difficult to have investments into our banking system. Some of them had to be doing global roadshows to attract investment. The moment you begin to do something domestically, which is a message I want to leave with you, these guys, no matter the amount of preaching you do, you won't get the investors to come. When you lead the way, they will come to pursue you, to come to make the investment. When we had the consolidation and these banks, grew up with some stature, now foreign banks were now coming to acquire them. I remember Barclays coming, and They wanted to invest, according to them, £500 million. They wanted to acquire the bank, and they wanted then to expand and so on. And I received the delegation. And my response was, fine, thank you very much, you're welcome. But I will prefer you, in fact, file your application, go and wait at the Hilton. I will bring you your banking license to Hilton, but not in the, to take this our own. I will bring it in the name of Barclays. Come and operate as Barclays. My goal is to empower these our own banks to become the future Barclays of Africa. That was my message to them. Because come to think about it, some of you know the banks that are foreign here. You have Citibank, you have this, you have that have been in Nigeria for decades. Take Citibank, for example. How many branches does it have in the country? Is it in your village? They will come, because there will be, how many, you need the, I don't know, atomic bomb to stop them. They will be coming. And again, why we must invest in that? Because for me, that is the sustainable investment that we must prioritize as a people, to give them the tools that they can participate in tomorrow. Otherwise, as the saying goes, sooner or later, the rich will not be able to sleep because the poor are hungry and angry, and they will be moving about. So for sustainability of our investment, it's in our enlightened self-interest to make sure that we empower everybody and lift the boat for everybody. That way we can secure investment of the future. And in conclusion, dear friends, I want to say, once again, congratulate you on this historic summit. Anambra will hold it on, I think we're doing 14th, 15th of next month. And we'll be having this guy. We're trying to structure it, maybe pig bagging on yours, and MD, we're inviting you. Pig bagging on this. We'll try to collaborate on this. We'll see what you've done there. Last year, we tried to close some deals, and this year, we're trying to see how far those deals went and what are we getting from them. So I want once more to congratulate you. It's our collective destiny to make Nigeria great by investing in and patronizing made in Nigeria. If we all wear made in Nigeria clothes, no less than 5 to 10 million jobs will be created from textiles. Investments will come. If we all drive made in Nigerian cars, all these Toyota and all of them will relocate to Nigeria and start off manufacturing plants in Nigeria. In my state now, there are 2 more that are setting up manufacturing, cars as well. Because we say, produce it, we'll patronize it. If you come to Anambra Government House, we're not offering you anything that is imported. You will either eat our food that is made in Anambra or made in Nigeria. The drink you drink will be made in Anambra or made in Nigeria or whatever. When you leave the government house, you can go and drink your chemical. But while you are there, I'm not going to use government taxpayers' money to attend to your appetite for foreign goods and so on and so forth. So we must intentionally add to the strategy to nurture and promote our national champions. Let's sit down with them. What do you need? But we negotiate it in a way that is also beneficial for the common good. For the common good. Because the next generations also have a stake in what we are having today. So Abuja Investment Company Limited has begun a new thing in the FCT. We are members here. I live here. Now that I see that the opportunity is there, first time they're talking about investment, so I now know that Abuja is not just to come and as a political office holder to come and sleep and attend meetings at the villa and attend here and go to. Now that I know that it is also open for investment, now we'll begin. We'll be part of your ambassadors in spreading this and so on. I pray that deals closed at this summit and the future ones under the auspices of AICL will fundamentally change the landscape of Abuja from the home of politicians to an economic powerhouse. May Abuja and Nigeria continue to win. Thank you very much, and God bless you.